Hi there, it's Jen from modernmedicinelady.com and the Empathic Mastery System, and happy Saturday evening. So I wanted to jump on today and talk about something that I haven't talked about in a while, and that is to talk about specifically what is EFT and how does it help empaths? Because I use it a lot and I talk about it a lot in sort of like, you talk about it or discuss it in passing, but I haven't really gone into a lot of depth about what it actually is and how, especially as a highly sensitive empathic person, it is a tool that can really absolutely change your life. Hey there, DE, welcome. So good to see you. I hope you are having a pleasant weekend. So, really simply put, EFT is a kind of emotional, mental acupuncture that doesn't use needles. And a little bit more of a complicated version of it is to say that by tapping on specific acupuncture points in our body, we can transform the way that we think about things. Hey, Calandra, so good to see you. I hope that your time at Target was not too challenging. And Lorraine, you are so welcome. I'm so glad that I could jump on. I had a moment and I washed my hair, so I really wanted to jump on today with because I was feeling all sparkly and shiny. So EFT stands for the words Emotional Freedom Techniques. And there's a broader term. Oh, I'm so glad it was a good trip, Calandra. That's wonderful. So there's a broader term that is kind of the umbrella, which is tapping. And the reason it's called tapping is because we specifically and actually tap on parts of our body. Now, if you have never experienced this, or if you're only just new to this, I will admit it can feel really weird and really awkward when you first start doing it, because you're tapping on the top of your head. You kind of look like, one of those like a monkey scratching the top of your head. Then you're tapping your eyebrows, the sides of your eyes, under your nose, under your lip, collarbone, side of the under the arm. Hey, Victoria, so good to see you. Happy Saturday to you too. And so when you first start doing that, it can feel really strange, especially if you feel self-conscious about doing it, or if you're ever in a situation where you're around other people and it's kind of like, I don't want to be tapping on my face with other people around me. The good news is, especially when you're watching a video with me, always under the arm gets you, totally. The good news is that when you're watching a video with me, for example, and you're in a room with other people, what's so cool is because ultimately we are all interconnected. If you watch the video and you have the intention that this is going to give you support, my tapping can basically sort of create a resonance in your body that will allow you to get the benefits, even if it's not convenient for you to do the tapping. But when you do the tapping, the advantage of this is that it really allows the part of your brain that is controlling the fight or flight mechanism, which is called the amygdala, to calm the ever-living F down. And the thing is, for a lot of us, especially those of us who are very, very highly sensitive and empathic, the thing is that a lot of times we came into this life in a state of distress. Many of us would have basically in utero picked up on the stress of our moms and experienced, like, if anything happened to your mom, and if your mom was a high-strung person like my mom was, then it didn't take much to set her off. And so that cortisol rush, that adrenaline rush that happened generally as soon as you had a body that was capable of responding to it, it's not uncommon to get flooded with your mom's stress hormones even in utero. And when that happens, that means that your body is starting a cascade of stress that you basically walk into life with. Now, I've talked about this before, but it's been a little bit of time since I've talked about it. The thing about the way that the human brain works, and the way that stress works in particular, is that we are designed to protect ourselves. And the part of our brain is in charge of fight or flight is the part that basically gets the alarm gets tripped when something is going on that's really challenging or difficult. And we are made to either fight or flee in order to protect ourselves from the situation. When we were living thousands of years ago and running away from saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths and dealing with true threat, what would happen would be that we'd get this rush of adrenaline, we would have the experience of a total of all this stress, and then we would either fight it off or run it off, but we'd burn off all of those stress hormones so that by the time we were safe and out of harm's way, our body would have rebooted itself, it would have reset itself, and that amygdala, that part of our brain that's in charge of it, basically it would have had the opportunity to sort of close the valve because we had used up all of the stress hormones that had gotten us out of harm's way. The problem with our society nowadays is that we are being exposed to, I think I saw something like 5,000 distressing, stimulating things on a daily basis between social media and television and just all the different assaults to our system. And so we were not made for this kind of level of constant stimulation and constant stress. And the thing about it is that our brain may rationally have the ability to distinguish between looking at something on Facebook that's talking about global warming or talking about our lovely president or talking about any other number of things that are stressful and the reality of something. Our brain can usually be like, that's just what I'm reading on Facebook, that's a real threat. Hi there, Claire, welcome. But the problem is that when it comes to the instinctive part of us, we can't distinguish between a perceived threat on Facebook and a real threat that we need to physically get out of harm's way from. And so what happens is we're seeing all these threats and it sets off all of these chains of reaction inside of us to protect ourselves. But because we are not fighting and we are not fleeing, we basically don't ever reset it. So we end up, hey there, Caroline, welcome. I hope you're having a wonderful Saturday evening. So the thing is that when we do this, we get into this perpetual state of distress where we are constantly setting off the stress hormones and we are not doing anything to reboot it. And some of us get into these patterns where we are just so used to being stressed out that it's just constantly happening over and over and over again. And from my own personal experience and from the work that I've done with a lot of other empaths, what I have found is that most of us experience something very stressful, when we were being carried in our mother's womb, or right around the time that we came into the world. And so we've basically been in this reactive state most of our life. Now, the thing about EFT is that this is a way to calm the nervous system down and to actually reboot our entire system and reboot our brain. And it actually gets the amygdala to stop sending out messages or signals that we need to be producing more stress hormones to protect ourselves. Now, if you are like I am, and you have ever been in a time in your life where you were a high-strung hot mess, which I totally was, then you probably know how amazing it would feel to not be in a state of distress. As a matter of fact, if you're like me, you might not even know what it feels like to be calm, because it's possible you've actually never felt calm, like fully calm. Because when I was younger, before I had this tool, I would say, like, there were a few times, like after swimming a ton of laps where my body had really kind of exhausted itself, that I would feel that kind of runner's high, or I'd feel a little bit more relaxed. But for the most part, I was constantly white-knuckling my way through every single day, basically trying to keep a lid on all of the feelings I was picking up from the world around me, and trying to just keep myself from flipping out, because it was just really stressful. And it wasn't until I experienced a real true relief with EFT, and that was after I'd been experimenting with it for a while, that I discovered what it felt like to be truly chilled out. And in my case, the sort of EFT miracle that everything, everywhere, picking it all, exactly, Lorraine. And that's what so many of us who are highly sensitive and empathic experience until we learn how to manage this. So when my first experience with EFT working for me was when my husband and I were driving home in an ice storm 2 hours south of where we live. And we had gotten sort of over the state border and into this area where it was like slushy, freezing rain. Now, I have a history of car accidents, and so as a result, at that point in time, I identified as somebody who had PTSD around driving in bad weather or just in dangerous driving conditions. Like, I was way more jacked about it and definitely way more reactive than a normal person would be. Now, I knew about EFT, but I'd never really experienced incredible relief from it before this. So I asked my husband if he wouldn't mind if I tapped. Hey, Sarah, welcome. Good to see you. Happy Saturday. So I asked my husband if he wouldn't mind if I tapped, and he said, sure, go ahead. And so I started tapping on the fact that there was icy roads, and I was really scared and anxious about the possibility that we would get into an accident. And I did about 3 rounds of EFT. And by the time I'd done about the 3rd or maybe 4th round, but not much time at all, like probably maybe no more than 10 minutes, I had gone from being at, like, if you were thinking of on a scale of 0 to 10, my 0 would be no feeling about it at all, and 10 being like, oh my God, we're gonna die, worst case, worst thing ever. I was probably somewhere in the vicinity of about a 9.5. Like, I knew it could be worse, but I was pretty jacked up. And I went from being in a place where I was at this like total 9.5, maybe even 10, maybe I'm underestimating, to a total 0. And my attitude was, yep, okay, this sucks. We're in bad weather. It's entirely possible we'll be in an accident. It's possible we'll even die. And I'm okay. And I had this feeling of calmness in my body that I had never, ever experienced before in my life. And if you've never experienced calmness because you've been picking up all the pain and suffering and fears and anxiety and all the crap going on in the world around you, let me just tell you that it is the most amazing feeling to not be feeling stressed. Now, I mean, I had experimented with alcohol, I had experimented with weed, I had more than experimented with food when I was younger, all looking for ways to get relief. The problem for me was every other thing I had ever done might have sort of like dampened the intensity of what I was picking up, but it never shut it off. It never stopped the whirring inside of me. So there was always this kind of nagging sense of distress in the back of my mind, always the awfulizing, always the worrying, always the what's going to happen next. And it was only when I tapped on this car, the possibility that we were going to be in some dangerous situation because we were driving through like 2 inches of freezing rain and slush, and it was awful weather conditions, that I was able to actually chill the ever-living F out for the first time in my life. And so that was the thing that showed me what was possible with EFT. And it was the thing that also got me so excited about what it could do, not only for me, but for the people I was working with. Because I had already been a healer for many, many, many years when I really discovered the miracles of EFT. So how can it help us as highly sensitive empathic people? Well, the thing about EFT is that it, for one thing, at the fundamental level, allows us to calm our nervous systems down. And it gives us an opportunity to reboot the way that our brain and our emotions are working so that we have a chance to change the way we engage with the world. And I don't know about you, but for me, that is radical. Like, that is a dramatic difference. And so worth the effort of learning how to do this. Like, just absolutely amazing. And so that's kind of the fundamentals of what it can do. But the other thing that you can use it for is that you can use it to address all kinds of different problems that are going on. Because essentially, if you think of yourself as energy, like if you know sort of from a physics standpoint that all things are energy and that all matter is basically a whole bunch of spinning electrons and atoms just moving really rapidly, and that we are essentially made up of energy, that any form of distress, any form of pain, any form of anything challenging or negative in our life is basically what I call like an energetic congestion. It is, or as Gary Craig would refer to it, who is Gary's kind of the granddaddy of EFT. He's the person who created the term and developed a lot of the specifics of the techniques we use. And Gary calls them zits, like sort of like almost like it's like a short circuit in the energy system. And when we use EFT, we can reroute the energy system. We can clear the channels. We can get the pathways moving correctly again, and we can undo the blockage. The thing that's so cool about this is that when you put a deliberate intention to focus on what you want to clear or heal or address, you can generally use EFT to work on bringing relief to nearly anything. As Gary used to say, or still says, try it on anything. So EFT can be used for physical sensations. It can be used for pain in the body. It can be used for chemical sensitivities, allergies, reactivities. Now, I am going to say when it comes to allergies, EFT is not a replacement for an EpiPen. If somebody has anaphylactic reactions to things, I would not run in there and say, I know EFT, let me save you. It's like if somebody needs to get an EpiPen, they need to get an EpiPen. Because a lot of times when somebody has that kind of anaphylactic reaction, there's a lot more going on. And over time, tapping can help somebody's nervous system and body calm down. But in those circumstances, I would say, don't just rely on EFT to make things better. But you certainly can tap on, even though I'm having this allergic reaction. And it's really uncomfortable. And, being shot full of an EpiPen is not my idea of fun. I'm okay. But so an example of actually a sensitivity happened a little while ago where I was running a group, and I was actually teaching in class and in a live group, and one of my students has chemical sensitivities. And one of the other students happened to not know this and was wearing some hair product. And so when they even got the tiniest whiff of the hair product, their whole system started to shut down. Their throat started to seize up, their heart started to clench, their eyes started getting itchy, their nose started getting itchy, and they started to feel really, really, really uncomfortable. And oh, good, Lorraine. I'm so glad that's helped you to understand it. So good. So they were really in a state of distress. Like their body was like, you know, ready to be like, I'm out of here. And so I was like, well, let's tap on it. And they started at like a good, like 8.5, 9 of distress. Like their body was in a state of reaction. And we just really used the very basic EFT and tapped on the reactivity, and we zeroed the whole thing out so that their body went from being on red alert to being calm and relaxed. Now, I've used this for sensitivities like this. I've used this for pain. There was a time I was down in Florida and I was walking around on the ground, and I don't know what it is about the ground in Florida, but maybe it's because I think it's on a coral ledge, and I'm very sensitive to the kind of earth that I'm standing on. And when I'm standing on a different kind of ground, sometimes I really feel it in my knees and my hips in particular. So I was experiencing knee pain walking around St. Augustine, and it was really uncomfortable. And so, oh, cool. And Victoria's just writing and saying that we've worked and eliminated a migraine during a session. So, you know, so that is, it's amazing to be able to bring relief to a migraine, because I know for so many people, migraines are so debilitating. And certainly having a little bit of knee pain walking around St. Augustine, it wasn't that big a deal, but it was a big enough deal. Like I had stabbing, shooting pain in my knee that was getting worse and worse, and I was beginning to be concerned that if I didn't do something about it, it was going to ruin the vacation, because I wasn't going to be able to keep walking. Because it had happened to me before at another event when we were at Universal Studios in Orlando. Like I said, something about the ground in Florida for me. And I didn't have the tools then that I had now, that I had when this happened. And so I started to tap on it. But in Orlando, because I didn't have the tools, I started limping after about a day of walking around, and I was in so much pain, I could barely get by. So I knew it could get worse and worse and worse. Like where it was at for me was maybe about a 7. So I just basically stopped in the stairwell and I tapped a couple rounds. Even though I have this knee pain, I love and accept myself. Even though this knee pain is sharp and stabby and uncomfortable, I love and accept myself. And I tapped it down and it went away. And that is an example of how EFT can be used for physical sensations and for physical pain. So between me and my student and then Victoria's comment, I'm giving you 3 examples of the way that EFT can shift things when it comes to physical reactions. Now, the other things that it can work with is emotional distress. It is absolutely amazing, like my example of emotional distress where I was really scared driving through the ice storm, and even driving through that ice storm, I was able to completely let go of the distress and calm myself down. I've also worked with a lot of other people with past events that are still causing an incredible amount of distress. And particularly events that happen in our childhood where we experienced something traumatic, where we experienced something violent, where we experienced something really, really shocking and difficult. Those kinds of experiences can really get stuck inside of our entire system. You know, they affect the way we think about the world, they affect the way that we move in our body, they affect the way we feel about things. They often continuously trigger us to react to things over and over and over again. And I saw a meme earlier today that I thought really summed it up, which basically said, if you don't deal with your wounds, You're going to bleed all over people who had nothing to do with it. And that's the thing. When we experience something that wounds us deeply, if we do not have a way to take care of it, then what happens is it impacts the rest of our life. We just keep bleeding out everywhere all the time. And so EFT, emotional freedom technique, allows us not only to address the present emotions we're feeling, but also to actually bring relief to specific past events that have happened in our life, and to take things that feel like I'm never, ever, ever going to let this go, down to like, okay, it's in the past. It's a faded memory. What's done is done. You know, it is what it is, and I can accept that it's time. I'm able to move on. And it's not like the way that a lot of times when you do talk therapy, or when you do sort of like all kinds of other things where you're telling yourself you should be ready to move on, but energetically and emotionally you're still stuck. The thing about EFT is that it actually brings relief to these kinds of things, because it allows us to let them go on an energetic level. Hey there, Ellen, so good to see you. Welcome and happy Saturday night. In addition to using EFT for physical pain, emotional distress, and disturbing past events, we can also use it for limiting beliefs and thoughts that we have about the way the world works. One of the things that I've done a ton of work on around for myself, and also with many, many, many of my clients, is stuff around abundance, money mindset, sense of worth and deserving, and believing that we are allowed to ask for what we need in the world, believing that it's okay to shine in the world. One of the things that I find is so common for almost every single empathic woman who's especially a business owner or an entrepreneur that I know, is that the fear of visibility is one of the biggest things that stops almost every woman I know in her tracks. And tapping is such a powerful tool for dealing with fear of visibility and just the fear of the fallout about it. So, and I certainly can say that, I mean, obviously, if you're here on my page, you can tell I'm not too scared of getting in front of people and talking to them on a Facebook Live. And I do sincerely believe that my ability to just keep consistently showing up and chatting with you guys about what really matters to me and what I think is hopefully going to really matter to you and make a difference for you is because I've done enough tapping that I'm not basically spinning my wheels or pulling the emergency brake anytime I start thinking about checking in and putting myself out there to the world on Facebook Live or in any other way. And so tapping is a fantastic tool for getting out of your own way and stopping the self-sabotage that so many of us do. Now, on top of that, if that wasn't good enough, it's like, but wait, there's more. If you use this technique, you'll win this too. The other thing is that it's also amazingly good to use for our pets, animals in general, and also for our kids or the children that we are the guardians of. And we can use this to bring relief for other people. And sound just shifted? Okay. I'm wondering what that... DE, could you give me, is that like as in something went softer, something went louder? Wondering. Anyway, I'm going to keep on talking and just explain that so that we can use EFT for... Oh, okay, you're relying... Okay, it's all okay. Thank you. Okay, good. So EFT can be used for working with our pets, working with our children, and we can also use it to tap for other people. The only thing I'm going to say about this is that when it comes to tapping for other people, unless it is your child and they are a minor or your pet, you need permission. You need consent. It is not ethically appropriate, and I really believe this, especially for empaths, for us to engage in anybody else's stuff or energy body without their direct consent and permission. But with that permission and consent, we can use tapping on behalf of other people to make a difference in their life too. So this is a tool that has dramatically changed my entire life, and is a tool that also has changed my life so much that I teach other people how to use it as practitioners, and I also work with many clients doing this with them because it has been so life-changing for me and so remarkable that it is something I actually really do want to shout from the rooftops and say, this shit is amazing, check it out, try it, it really, really, really works. Now, I will say that when it comes to the it really, really works, not all tapping is created the same. And so if your exposure to tapping is like a bunch of tap-along videos on YouTube or Facebook where somebody's like, you know, I'm feeling funky today, or I'm feeling anxious today. When you're really broad like that, it generally tends to take the edge off, but it doesn't resolve the issue. And that's one of the differences between sort of tapping as an umbrella term and EFT, emotional freedom techniques, that are specifically designed to target exactly what's going on and address it, as opposed to tapping can sometimes be a lot more broad and a lot more general. So my mentor, Jade, always says, and I kind of, you know, I love this so much, I say it all the time myself, that basically in order to be effective, the most effective way to work with tapping and EFT is that you focus on basically an inch wide and a mile deep, as opposed to some of that more general tapping, which is often a mile wide but only an inch deep. So when it comes to getting to root causes, when it comes to getting to the core of the issue, if you're sort of going over the whole tabletop and sort of addressing all kinds of things all over the map, so sure, you might be able to sweep a little bit of that up, but when push comes to shove, it's not nearly as effective as when you laser in on something very specific. And so one of the things that I think it may be Ann Adams, who's another EFT person, said, oh God, I think it was something like, it's terrific to be specific, you know, and that really is like that. In order to do this work really effectively and well, the more specific we are, the more precise we are about what's really going on, the more effective the results can be. And so that leads me to an additional comment and explanation before I get into actually teaching you guys and explaining the basic recipe to you. And that is to really be clear with you that there's a big difference between a tap-along video and tapping with me on a YouTube, on a Facebook Live like this, and working with a skilled practitioner, or even doing work for yourself where you really are going in and working through the many layers. Now, what I'll say from my personal experience is that when it comes to the really, I find it fairly easy to tap on chemical sensitivities in my body, to tap on feelings of overwhelm, to tap on feelings that are just sort of coming up for me, sleeplessness, having restlessness before going to bed, physical pain in my body. All of these things I find fairly easy to tap on. But when it comes to dealing with the really deep burdock roots and the stuff that's really old and entrenched, I find it very, very helpful to work with another skilled practitioner and get support and help from them to do my work. And there's a saying that I really love, which is, you can't read the label from the inside of the jar. So a lot of times having that objective perspective that a skilled, trained, good practitioner can offer can make all the difference in the world. So what I'm teaching you guys is the basic recipe, but it's kind of like I'm showing you like a pencil in an entire like art studio full of supplies, because this is a very versatile tool. It's a spectacular tool, and it can be used to address so many different things. And there are a lot of nuances to it, and the more energy and effort and time you put into it, the more benefit you'll get. So experimenting with a tap along video on YouTube or tapping along with me on Facebook is going to give you some support, but for the really big, deep stuff, like say an experience of an assault when you were a teenager, or even a, you know, like a preteen or something, or a long-standing history of like a family belief about working too hard, you know, like you're never going to make it. Like, you know, our family is just cursed to dig in the dirt. Any number of those kinds of things that are just like you've been carrying it around your whole life. A lot of times getting support to work through it is really, really helpful. So I just wanted to say that and be really clear that when I'm doing this stuff live and online, for one thing, I can't customize and I can't dig in and ask the kinds of questions that I get to ask as a practitioner when I'm working one-on-one. And that's a really big piece of what I teach my students to do too, is how to get very specific, how to get very precise, and how to really dial in. Oh, I have one other example that I wanted to share with you that I got distracted about. And that was to say that right when Mercury went direct, like ironically, my website crashed. Like the entire thing, including every single landing page and place for the freebies for like EFT for Empaths, where there's like a whole bunch of stuff for, actually not EFT for Empaths, yeah, nope, EFT for Empaths is down, but also like holiday help for Empaths, which right now is like people definitely need. And there's a whole kit, survival kit that I've got for people to support them, all of it down. And, you know, I posted a comment on a group that I'm part of, and I was like saying, trying not to panic. But you know what? The thing that's absolutely amazing is that I really didn't panic. I went, oh, great. This may mean I'm going to have to just like completely like start, not completely from scratch, but that I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of stuff, and it's going to be a pain in my butt. But there was no emotional charge. Like I was not. Hey there, Kelly, and hey there, Tammy. So good to see you both. Welcome. So, but the thing is that there would have been another time in my life where I would have had, like if you're a business owner, if you have a website, and especially one that you've had for a number of years where you've built up a lot of embedded content that's hidden, but it's like that you use for a lot of other stuff, then you know, like could you imagine if the whole thing just went belly up, like and everything you tried didn't work? Like I know that there would have been another time in my life where if that had happened, I would have gone into spiraling into a negative, like into just like a black hole of depression and fear. I didn't. I was just like, okay, that's a pain in the butt. I need to go and work on some other stuff. I'll come back around to it later. And when I finally got in touch with tech support for my domain host, they were like, oh yeah, there was something that fell apart on our end. We'll fix it. So then I went to bed, got up the next morning, and they hadn't fixed it. So I called them again, and they said, oh yeah, actually, the server that your entire website is on is being updated. It's going to be down for a little while. So all I had to do was just basically say, you know, could you possibly put me on a mailing list or something that gives me a notification so that I know this? So Kelly, I'm not really talking about blocking things, but I'll address that briefly in saying blocking for an empath is about as effective as like putting on a little rain slicker and going out into a hurricane. The problem with blocking is that it doesn't address the root cause of the issue of being highly sensitive and empathic. So whenever you start pushing things away and trying to block it by pushing it, you create an incredible resistance. You also create pressure in the system, and so you might be able to hold it back. You might be able to keep the lid on for a while, but the problem with that is that over time, that energy that you're putting into trying to keep yourself protected exhausts you, and it builds up pressure until eventually the whole system just blows. And so blocking and trying to control empathic abilities really does not serve us at all. And to truly shift the way that we function as empaths, we have to actually learn how to live completely differently than we were taught. And it really takes a lot of willingness to do the work, because otherwise we will just keep spiraling out and experiencing these periods of where we feel like we're in control and we're totally holding on and grasping at all of it. And then basically after we exhaust ourselves, everything blows out and we just become psychic sponges and completely overwhelmed again. So today I'm talking about just one thing, which is talking about how emotional freedom technique is a way to help calm our nervous system down so that we're not so reactive, and we're also learning how not to be so triggered by everything that's going on in the world around us. But oh my God, Sarah, so yes, EFT is known to be one of the most effective tools for working with PTSD, particularly, yes, sage and salt is definitely helpful, but sage and salt is an external solution to an internal problem. Sage and salt will help, but the thing is, in order to truly address being highly sensitive and empathic, you have to learn how to deal with your own energy body and how to do things really differently in the world. Now, the good news is I have a book coming that talks all about all this shit, and it's going to be coming out sometime probably mid to late spring of next year. And so I also have a ton of material in the videos here on my Facebook page. I strongly suggest you check them out and you check out some of what I'm already talking about. The other thing is I invite you to go back to the top of this video, because what I'm talking specifically about is emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping, as a way to calm our nervous system down as sensitives. And but I'm not going to pretend and sugarcoat and say that changing your entire life as an empath is going to be easy. It is truly a commitment, and it is truly something where it's like you got to be willing to be willing. But in the same way that an alcoholic is never going to be okay as long as they keep drinking, an empath is never going to have the relief that they need until they're willing to basically do the work to be in what I would call an empath in recovery. And and that's the thing. So Sarah, I definitely want to respond to your question regarding PTSD. The thing that's incredible with EFT is that it has been studied more than any other modality for addressing PTSD, specifically with veterans. And the results are absolutely incredible. Now, I will say that when it comes to using EFT for trauma, it's incredibly important that the person who's using it knows what the ever-living F they are doing. That it is a very powerful tool. It's like a laser. And so in the wrong hands, it could cause some harm if somebody does not know how to tread very carefully and very lightly. And that's one of the things also about the difference between sort of general, broad stream, broad spectrum tapping and emotional freedom techniques, is that within the system of emotional freedom techniques, there are all kinds of extremely gentle techniques that I teach in level 1 and 2 so that people really know how to tread very carefully and also how to look for the signs so that we are being so gentle as we are working on dismantling these bombs that have been in people's systems for their entire lives. So I've seen miracles, absolute miracles. I will also say that when it comes to trauma and particularly PTSD, that when somebody's experienced an individual or single event, it is often much easier to clear it very quickly and miraculously than when you are doing. So Kelly, check out this page. I mean, seriously, if you look at my Facebook page, there is a ton of material here on my page. I have so many videos that you could probably spend the next month watching videos. I'm almost not kidding. And also, unfortunately, my website is down, or I would say go over to modernmedicinelady.com, but I'm not quite sure when that will be back up. But if you want to check that out, that's there too. And also, please like this page. Please hit those 3 little buttons at the top of this video that says follow Jennifer, and so that you'll get notified when I come on again, because I really, when I get on, I want to talk to you guys about stuff that is actually important, that actually makes a difference and really matters, instead of doing sort of that slick marketing shit where it's like I'm giving you some kind of little teaser and not really talking about anything that matters. So if you follow me, I really do make an effort to give you guys material that is useful to you, as opposed to that kind of I don't know, fake Facebook, hey, I'm jumping on Facebook to talk to you about something, but to really get any information, you're going to have to sign up for my list, and then you're going to have a call with me. And the thing is that, I do teach, and I do mentor, and I do coaching programs with people where I give them a lot of support, and I'm not going to lie to you, I charge the big bucks to do the work that I do with people. But the thing is that I believe so strongly that this information is so important that I want to get it out there and share it. And I figured that the people who really want to work directly with me, they'll know that I'm the right person for them, and they can reach out and check in with me, and we can make it happen. Anyway, enough of all that. So let me see. So Sarah, what I was gonna say to finish up the piece about PTSD is just that when you're talking about protracted, compounded distress, where somebody has gone through repeated, numerous experiences of it, then it's a lot more, you have to be a lot more deliberate, a lot more systematic, and it takes a lot longer to deal with than when you're talking about where somebody experienced one thing. So ironically, for example, 9/11 would be something that is actually easier to tap on than somebody who had a history of child abuse from the age of 2 until they finally left their house at the age of 17. And so even though it might look like 9/11 is more devastating because it was such a specific event, that particular thing can be cleared in a way that a lot of times the long standing stuff doesn't. Now, what I will say about 9/11 is that now, after living through it for so long, now it's probably a lot more compounded because there's been so much fallout and aftermath. Oh, absolutely, Tammy. Stress is going to affect your ability to get messages. The other problem with stress is it's going to distort your perception of the messages, and a lot of times it's going to impact the way that you receive the information and you interpret the information. Because if you've got a trigger inside of you from either something that has happened in the past or you're just stressed out and triggered in the day, then anything that even remotely resembles those kinds of things is going to be seen through those filters, and as a result is often misinterpreted. So I'll give you an example. I know somebody who's pretty sensitive, but also is somebody who is a fairly high-strung and distressed person. And a number of years ago, their kid had gone on walkabout for the night. And I remember talking with them and they were like, oh my God, Jenny, I'm totally sure. I have this awful vision. I can totally see him in a ditch. I know he fell off a bridge and he's in a river and he's dead and he's drowned. And I'm just kind of like, okay, not so sure that's what happened, but hey. And the thing was that they were so anxious and so scared that their perception of what was going on was completely distorted by their fear and their stress. And wouldn't you know, the next day, the kid shows back up, a little bit worse for the wear and tear because they've been getting stoned all night, but alive. And that's the thing, is that when we're stressed, our psychic abilities are compromised. So even from the standpoint of being empathic and especially intuitive and psychic, and if you're working for other people with it, de-stressing your system is going to make a huge difference. Okay, so I feel like I've lectured or explained and taught to you guys enough for a while. And what I really want to do right now is give you the tutorial on how do you actually do EFT? Because I've kind of talked about the sort of how it works, the idea that it basically resets that part of our brain that controls our stress hormones and controls fight or flight, and it allows us to repattern the way we see things and create a whole new way of being in the world. So the very basic recipe is this. You start by tapping. I use 3 fingers, but some people use 2. Some people use their hand like this. There's no wrong way to do this, except that you want to hit the side of your hand, this kind of fleshy part here. So you're going to start by tapping on the side of your hand, and this is where a bunch of acupuncture meridians end, and this is where a bunch of meridians end. So you start by tapping on the side of your hand and do what is called the setup. And actually, I'm going to backtrack because before you even do the setup, you need to define what's going on. So the first step of doing the basic recipe is define the problem. Figure out what's going on and then test it. Say, okay, how am I really feeling about this? So on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being no feeling at all and 10 being I am stressed out of my ever-living mind, worse than it's ever been before in my life, then you figure out where you're at on that. And I like taking a piece of paper and writing down the number at the beginning so that I understand what's going on. So we've defined it and we've tested it. And then the next step is the side of the hand where we do what's called the setup. Now the setup very traditionally goes, even though I have this issue or this problem or this thing happened to me or I feel this pain or whatever it is that you're dealing with. And then we do what I personally have coined as the turnaround in the setup. You say something positive. So the classic one was, even though I have this pain in my hip, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And the turnaround was, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Now, obviously, it's not always I have this pain in my hip, but that was just an example. Now, the thing about I deeply and completely love and accept myself, that's great for some people. There are a lot of people who think that's way too Pollyanna, and a lot of people who are having a hard time deeply and completely loving and accepting themselves. And if that's the case, saying that can cause sort of the alarm system in the head to go off and just go, bullshit, that's not really happening for me. So finding something that works, like I'm okay anyway, or I can accept this anyway, or I accept myself the way that I am, or I love myself anyway. Something that works for you, or I can choose to relax about it anyway. Whatever it is that works as a good turnaround for you. And then we do that 3 times. That's classic traditional EFT, is the 3-time setup. So even though I have this problem, I'm okay anyway. Even though I have this problem, I could accept that it is what it is. Usually you want to keep 1 turnaround. I'm just giving you guys some different examples. Even though this thing is going on, I'm open to the possibility that it can shift. So again, another example of a turnaround. And then what you do is you choose a very simple, like a couple words tops, like 1 to maybe 4 words total, reminder phrase so that you know what it is that you're dealing with. Now, if the situation is really intense and you're at like over a 7, what I would recommend is that you use a very neutral reminder phrase. So like, for example, if you had, let's say you were tapping on a fire that happened like recently in your neighborhood and it was really stressful. You probably wouldn't call it the big fire. Instead, you might do something like call it the name of the street, or you might call it the date that it happened. So, that day in January. But something that will help you to anchor the idea of what you're tapping on, but not bring up a ton of feeling about it. Because we don't necessarily want to go into a ton of feeling. What we want to do is give ourselves a chance to clear it before we start opening it up and unpacking it more. Now, I'm just going to show you guys the very basic recipe tonight, because really, once you start the nuances of working with EFT and going further and further into it, honestly, you're better off like starting to actually study it and look at, and if this really grabs you, I really invite you to consider taking a class. And if you have the ability to travel to Maine, I do classes here a couple times a year in this beautiful setting. So anyway, we're just going to do the basic recipe. So if you want to think about, experiment with something, I want you to pick something not a big deal right now. Like if you were going to think about something that was maybe causing you a little bit of stress or some physical pain, pick something that's like between a 3 and a 4, or like between a 1 and a 4. Don't go over that. So like I don't recommend that you dig into your dirty laundry or the skeletons in your closet right now. We're just going to experiment with this, and I'm showing you how to do it. And I'm just going to say this issue, and I'm going to say I accept myself anyway as the turnaround, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So we'd start with, so first we defined it, then we tested it for how strong it is, and now we're going to do the setup, even though I have this issue, and you guys could fill in your own thing. I accept myself anyway. So even though I have this issue, and you guys can fill it in, I accept myself anyway. And as I'm tapping, you can tap along, and also I'm going to give you some places to pause so that you have the opportunity to repeat after me. And if I say something and it doesn't quite work for you, change the words to work for you. And I will also say, as with all of my videos, you agree to take 100% responsibility for your own process. Don't go places you don't belong. And like I said, if I say something and the words don't work for you, change it to work for you. And if it feels like something starts getting stirred up, I would say back off of the words and just gently keep tapping and breathing calmly. Okay, so, and you might have noticed I changed hands. There's 2 reasons for that. 1, so I can keep track of doing 3 setups. And 2, because stimulating both sides sort of opens up more of the pathways more easily than just doing one side. But it's totally fine to do it one hand, to do just one side, and even to tap on only one side. Okay, even though I have this issue, and hi there, Carol, welcome. I accept myself anyway. This issue, see how we're tapping on the top of the head, kind of right around the crown chakra, and you can kind of tap until it almost feels like something clicks for you. Eyebrows, this issue. Now sides of the eyes, this issue. And again, sides of the eyes is like right on sort of after the eye socket, on the temple, right kind of where your eyelids would meet. Under the eyes, right where my glasses end, right on the edge of the eye socket, underneath your eyes, parallel to your pupils, under the nose, right on this Cupid's bow, under the lip, again, right between the chin and the lip, in that groove, collarbone points. Now this is like where you have your clavicle bones, just down from the clavicle bones. And again, you can kind of feel around until you feel like it almost clicks. There's also ones that are over to the side, which are called the sore points, that you could use instead. And then under your arm, following down, I'm going to step back a little bit, following down past, right, it's parallel to your nipple, past your breast tissue, right on your rib cage. And you can do the other side as well. And then back to the top of the head. And so that is an example of a round of tapping. So does anybody have any questions? And if you want to give me some hearts to let me know that it makes total sense to you, or thumbs up, that would be awesome. And now that I've shown you how to do it, what do you say we do another round just to sort of get a feel for it? And how about we set the intention of letting our bodies relax, and maybe like, and specifically we'll do a round for stress, okay? So right now I just want you to close your eyes, tune into your body for a second, and just evaluate how much stress you're feeling. Tammy, you are so welcome. Okay, so now that you have a sense of the stress, you might even want to notice where it is in your body. We're just going to do a little bit of tapping on the stress. Okay, so even though I'm feeling some stress, and I feel it in my, where do you feel it? I'm okay. And it's safe for me to relax. It's safe for me to unwind. So even though I'm feeling some stress, and I feel it in my, where do you feel it? I'm okay. And it is safe for me to relax. And it is safe for me to unwind. So even though I'm feeling some stress, and I feel it in my, where do you feel it? Just name it. Because part of the way this works is that we name what's going on. We're not trying to pretend it's not happening. We're naming it so we can give it space to clear and shift. I'm just acknowledging it. And I'm okay. And it is safe for me to relax. It is safe for me to unwind. All this stress, 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 take a deep breath. And just notice where you're at now and how different your system may be feeling. And for those of you guys who are watching right now, if you want to write in your scale, so like, do me a favor and write a comment where you write what number you started at and what number you're at now, okay? And usually at this point in time, you might be down, like if you started at like a 7 of stress, or you started at a 6 of stress, sometimes people will be down to like, you know, somewhere a 9 to a 5. Awesome. Thank you, Victoria. So I'm going to show you how to work with that. So we brought it down, but we haven't brought it down all the way. So even though I'm still at a 5 of stress, I'm okay. And it's safe for me to relax, and it's safe for me to unwind. So even though I'm still at a 5, and I'm going down to a 4, I'm okay. And it is safe for me to relax and safe for me to unwind. So even though I'm at a 5, I'm at a 4, it is safe for me to relax. I'm okay. And it's okay for me to unwind. This remaining 5 or 4, this remaining 4 or 5 of stress, 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 this remaining 4 or 5, 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 this remaining 4 or 5. It's safe for me to let this go. It's safe for me to relax. It's safe for me to unwind. I'm okay. It's safe for me to relax. It's safe for me to unwind. It's safe to relax. I'm okay. It's okay to unwind. I can let myself unwind. I can let myself unwind. I am okay. Let's take a deep breath. Doesn't that feel good? It's like whole body just starting to decompress. And if you're like me, you may never have been calm until recently. I had this experience where, as I was mentioning, having a high-strung mom, I was doing some tapping with a dear friend of mine who's a coach, and I ended up doing this piece about being, I went back and I ended up in utero, like in the 2nd trimester, where this thing had happened where my dad had gone out and my mom had no idea where he was, and she just totally freaked. And it was like her fear flooded my tiny, tiny, tiny little body with so much stress that I pretty much came into this life with in a state of distress. And only through lots and lots and lots of tapping have I gone from being in that state of constant worrying and constantly, intensely, yes, Victoria, yay! You know, constant intensity, to really being able to be in a state of just like chill, like really, really zeroed out. And that is possible. That is the thing about this technique. It is possible to change your entire life using EFT. It is possible to let go of stuff that you never, ever dreamed that you could let go of. It's pretty remarkable, amazing stuff. And I cannot tell you how powerful it is to work with this. So I see Victoria's down to a 1. That seems like a good place for us to be. And I'm so glad, Tammy, that is feeling better for you too. I'm so grateful that you guys have been here this evening. It's been such a pleasure to spend time with you and to share this tool that is really, truly one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. And I just really appreciate all of you being here. Oh, Sarah, that is wonderful. So if you were going to continue tapping, you could go, even though I still have a 2. There's just a little sticky stuff left in the stress. I love and accept myself, or it's okay for me to let this go, whatever feels right. And just, you could experiment with doing like 1 more round and see if it brings it down. Because, you know, just a little bit of tapping can go an incredibly long way, and a lot of tapping, like quantum shifts in your entire reality. So I think I'm going to sign off pretty shortly, but I do want to say that when it comes to this work, the more we do it, the better it gets. And I sincerely, wholeheartedly, to the very depth of my very core, believe that we highly sensitive empathic people are a big part of the solution on this planet, and that we are the ones who are going to be able to turn the tide and help us to birth this new world. But the thing is, we can either be part of the solution or we can be part of the problem. And as long as we are constantly, so much love back to you, Victoria. As long as we are constantly absorbing all the pain, the suffering, the stress, the fear, the anxiety, the everything from the world around us, and we are psychic sponges, and we are in a state of taking things in, we are, if anything, you know, if at best, we're useless. But at worst, we are actually contributing to the negativity by broadcasting what we're picking up and amplifying it in the world. And so one of the things that we really want to be able to do is learn how to go from being the vacuum that's sucking it all in to pausing and being in a place of stillness, to then eventually being able to be the amplifier that is sending light and love and healing out into the world. And that is what I sincerely believe we empaths are capable of doing, and we are here on this planet to do. And that means that we need to learn how to take care of ourselves, we need to learn how to heal ourselves, and we need to learn how to not take on absolutely everything that is going on in the world around us. Now, empathic mastery is all about this, and it is a 5-step system that basically teaches us how to first recognize what's ours and what's not ours, 2, to release the stuff that isn't, and EFT is a big part of that, 3, to learn how to create effective filters and shields so that we are not, and protect ourselves. And then 4, so we're not constantly just taking more stuff back in, but 4, to make that divine connection, to connect to our higher power, to connect to source, so that we're not trying to do it all on our own and running around on a battery pack. And then 5, to really act in a whole new way. Because in order to truly change our lives, we need to be willing to make lifestyle changes, sustainable ones and ones that we do over and over again. Kind of like in the same way that if somebody goes on a diet and they just diet, and then as soon as they get off the diet, they go back to eating exactly the same way they were eating before, I can pretty much tell you they're going to gain all that weight back and then some. That in order to truly change, in order for something to truly be lasting and sustainable, it means we must change the way we act. So, empathic mastery, a 5-step system: recognize, release, protect, connect, and act. So I'm going to make one more request to you guys tonight. Since my website is down, I can't send you over there. But what I can do is I can ask you, oh, I'm so glad, Sarah. I can't wait for my book too. Right now it's with the beta readers, and I'm waiting for, you know, at Christmas, at Yule, I'm going to get their feedback and then spend 2 weeks going back in and reworking it before it's time to go format it and get it ready for the next exciting promotional part of it. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you guys to help me get this video out into the world, and to invite people that you think might find this useful to check it out. You know, so please like this, please share this, please pass it along to other people who would find it useful. And I have one extra special request, which is if you're part of any light working groups, if you're part of any empath groups, if you're part of any kind of spiritual woo groups where this could be helpful, I would be so grateful for your help to get this into those groups. Thank you, Victoria. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the reason I'm asking specifically for you guys to help me post stuff in groups is I don't know if you've ever read group policies, but 9 times out of 10, the spiritual groups are like, no self-promotion, which means that if I have a video about something that I've done, it kind of looks like self-promotion. My reason for wanting to get this out there is really because I want to support other empaths. So if you guys can help me by posting this video or other videos that you find useful in groups that you're part of, I will be eternally grateful. So I'm just going to thank you in advance for all of your help and really appreciate you being here. Also, if you haven't already done it, please like this Facebook page. And if you want to know when I'm here again and going online, doing Facebook Live, then please hit the 3 dots that says get notified when Jennifer comes online again. You guys, so much love to all of you. Victoria, Sarah, Lorraine, Tammy, all of you guys. It is such a delight to have you all here. I'm so grateful that you guys show up and you jump on when I jump on. It's such a gift, such a pleasure. I am truly humbled and grateful that you're here and that you take your precious time to listen to me talk about this stuff. So, mwah. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you, Carol and Kelly and Dee and Ellen, and Claire and Calandra and Jenna. I didn't notice you, Jenna. Sorry I didn't say hi to you before. All of you, thank you so much for everything. I hope you guys have a great evening or a wonderful day if you are living in another part of the world. And until next time, I'm wishing you peace. And very likely I'm going to jump on again tomorrow. So probably around the same time when I'm done doing some work with somebody. So, love you. Love you all. Bye-bye.